And it looks like we're live. Welcome everyone to the Weave Ignite meeting. We have an action-packed agenda today. Let me take a look. So we have no actions from last meeting, which is great. As first agenda item, Lucas wanted to talk about the Awkward 5 release that's coming up.
Right. Yeah, let's dive into it already. I could maybe share my screen and from there walk through the latest changes in this release. Let me just check that. There we go. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. So yeah, we're about to release 0.5 in hopefully tomorrow, most probably. I'm at the moment releasing a release candidate of 0.5, and tomorrow we expect the real release to go out. We have a lot of different changes here compared to 0.4 in the right direction. Most notably, we've split Ignite into two binaries. One for Ignite, which will be the CLI, and one that is called Ignite D, which is the daemon for Ignite. So eventually we're graduating into a client-server model. We do it in steps though, so we haven't quite yet made. So the Ignite client is still doing everything that it needs to do. So it's not dependent on any daemon yet, but it will most probably become in a future release. Then we have ARM64 support, and that's really nice because now personally I'm going around to try to see if it works on my Raspberry Pis. I got Raspberry Pi 4, so that has the generic interrupt controller. The new 4 has that kind of hardware support, which is needed for virtualization. So maybe we'll need to patch Firecracker somehow. Maybe not. We'll see. But at least we have Ignite binaries for ARM64 now. Ben the Elder, the author of Kind, contributed Ignite exec. So we now have a way to, in a similar way to Docker exec, run short-lived commands in places where you don't need a full SSH session. More about the Ignite D split. As some of you might remember, we have, there was a Thank God It's Kubernetes session from Joe Beda directly after the announcement of Ignite. And there he tried different things out, and one of the suggestions he actually had was to create a manifest directory in the similar way as the kubelet in Kubernetes has static pods. So we were already on our way to do that, and now we have implemented this. So basically how it works is that you start Ignite D, and then you drop a file in, for example, etc Firecracker manifests. And when you put your VM specification there, Ignite will notice that, well, here's a new VM specification I should be running, and reconcile to make that happen. So it works kind of like a Kubernetes controller, but we use the file system here because it's not dependent on Kubernetes if we want to run Kubernetes. Then we have, we also support copying our directories with that flag, and also read-write GitOps is a really good one that we've done in the past couple of days. I could show an example. If you are familiar with Flux, Flux that You might have seen so-called, not this one. Let's do. Here we go. So you might be familiar with that GitOps works in, or at least can work in both ways. Either you have it read-only, so that you just receive updates that have been pushed to a Git repo with specification on what should be run. But for real GitOps, the thing that makes it happen, in this case Ignite, also pushes back information about the current status. And here, for example, there, we can see that once there's more information available to Ignite about the actual state, Ignite goes ahead and can apply patches to status here. So as it has more information, for example, like IP addresses, knowledge about the image that is running, the content that is there, JSON size, that kind of stuff, it will be updated back to the Git repo. So this is really convenient when you, because now when you're using the GitOps flow, you can submit manifest to the Git repo, and the Ignite D goes ahead and reconciles, make this happen, and pushes back to the Git repo the actual status of this VM. So then you get IP addresses and such stuff, and can act based on that. Then
yes. Quick question.
Yes.
For the GitOps interaction, if I delete a manifest from the repo, how does Ignite respond to that?
It deletes the, like say we were running a VM called myVM. You had it in your Git repo, and Ignite had in the previous, like here, started the VM and updated these fields. And if I went ahead and removed this file now, it would remove, or it would stop the VM from that was running and basically delete it.
But similar to Flux, if I were to move that into a different directory, then I can reorganize the repo as long as the VM's ref doesn't change, right?
Yes. So as long as the UID stays the same.
For now, if you do move a specification file, it will remove the VM or delete the VM and then reconstruct it from scratch. So it doesn't detect move operations separately at the moment, but that's going to be in a future release, so that it doesn't need to delete the VM and reconstruct it when moving.
Okay, and next we have.
Do we have an open issue for that?
Not yet, not that I remember. I can open one.
You're pretty positive that's the behavior, Dennis?
Yes.
Would you like me to open that issue?
If you would like to, yeah, that would be helpful.
Okay, yeah, I'll do that.
Perfect. And as part of going forward with the API specifications, we have bumped the API from V1 Alpha 1 to V1 Alpha 2. Here, not in these release notes yet, it shows all the different things that have changed, but that is going to come up in very soon. I think Dennis has a PR. Let's show the diff. So we've changed a couple of different things that make it more future-proof, and there we go. Or maybe view file. There we go. So, for example, by request of Ben the Elder, we added bind address and protocol. We're going to use this for kind integration so Kubernetes kind integration, so that it can start up a VM and it can start up Kubernetes API serverings in that VM, but it binds to a port, but it can bind to localhost, for example, so you don't expose your the maybe untrusted API server to the world.
No, yeah, that's a good thing to add.
And we've added block storage support. So now you can move you can mount any block device. It can be a physical disk, or it can be like virtual block device file. And
a loop device, a file mounted as a loop device, basically.
Yes. You can mount it inside a VM as of this. So that is, of course, good when dealing with persistent storage.
And this very closely follows the Kubernetes configuration for named volumes. So we have volumes, and then we have volume mounts, and they match each other via the name.
Yes.
That makes it extensible if we want different kinds of volumes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
mount subpaths and things like that as well. That could be a feature.
Yes, and we have and now just quickly. My screen sharing went really slowly, so I'm gonna just close an application and try again. Yes, so we're aiming to add CSI support in the future too. So if you're right now, it should be back. So if you're now we just have raw block devices, but eventually we hope to add CSI and other modes for this. So that's that, and then a couple of those are the changes, and this one we renamed basically this path. So before it was image, OCI, ref, and OCI claim, sorry, and ref. Now it's just image and OCI, and that allows us to get the image from multiple like providers in the future to not just OCI if we wanted to, but we don't have any such plans. But in that case, the API allows that. So those are the spec changes of V1 Alpha 2, and there's quite a lot of other. And yeah, one more thing, we have removed network mode, which can be either Docker networking, Docker Bridge networking, or CNI. And instead, this is given to Ignite at runtime. So you can, that basically means that if you have one Ignite D running, you're going to say that Ignite D -- network plugin and CNI or Docker Bridge. Not that every VM has to define what networking to use. That's because that could lead to trouble if you have like desired, like your configs now, your VM specifications now aren't really portable anymore, because you have to take into account where do I deploy this depending on where you have different networks. So yeah, those are the high level changes of V1 Alpha 2, and it goes into the direction also with status to allow for multiple container runtimes, like Containerd in the next release. Any more questions around that? Okay, let's proceed. So that was a couple of those. We've added CI testing, which is a relief now that we have something that checks our code. We have created a runtime interface. I just said that we have we're aiming to add Containerd support in the future, and now you can, or anything that implements this interface can be used as a container runtime. So as long as we can inspect images, pull, export, etc., inspect containers, run them. Something that can do that can be used as the backing runtime. So hence Ignite and Containerd should be pretty easy to add once we go into the next release. The Docker client looks like this. So basically, it's implementing the Ignite interface here, returning Ignite types, but then under the hood using Docker's client. So that's how that works, and allows for portability to different places, and a lot of underlying improvements to better use the Kubernetes API machinery that we have in the backing. We have a lot of bug fixes, cleanups, that kind of stuff. And well, Ignite, read the docs. We talked about this a bit earlier too in the last meeting, but we have a lot of different content that is expanding now even more. For example, if you wanted to check out the API types here, everything's documented in detail in these ones. And you can also see the difference between V1 Alpha 1 and V1 Alpha 2. Also CLI reference between Ignite and Ignite-D, and releases. We had a community contribution to add or document known cloud provider instances that are supporting KVM. So for example, these machines on AWS support KVM, and really powerful too. And this is how you can create virtual machines in Google Cloud with nested virtualization support. Cool.
Regarding the CPU support for Ignite, that we have now added the ARM64 support, excluding Raspberry Pis for the moment, but it should work on Packet, for example. I'm updating the docs to reflect that change as well, so we have easier, more visible information of can I run Ignite on platform X. So that documentation will then include examples of CPUs that support KVM and their required virtualization. So yes, this page, after I've updated the docs, will then contain more information of what machines you can run Ignite on.
Yes, cool. Great. Anything more? So that's coming in the hopefully tomorrow. Exciting to see it land, have better GitHub support, and a lot of new features. With this, one other thing is that we've integrated with Footloose. There we go. So if you're not familiar with Footloose from before, it's application, a program you can use to run containers similarly to virtual machines. So to distinguish that look like virtual machines. So this is basically a thing that does a normal Docker run, just like it has an image and it does a normal Docker run, but instead of booting, instead of having an application like Nginx or starts bash as PID1, it actually starts as bin init, which is systemd. So these are containers that run systemd as PID1, and then you get like a fully blown system inside of your container, but with a couple of limitations. So for example, you're not having actually any more isolation than in a normal container, and you still share the same kernel and loads of those things. And Docker in Docker works, but it requires some hacks, etc. And so that's, for example, what kind Kubernetes in Docker does, like this one. It's also using the Docker in Docker, the same flow. Footloose is, however, a generic project how to run these container images that can be used with both Ignite and Footloose, but just in Docker. So it has an API that looks like this. So you define a set, and also it's different from Ignite because it deals with sets of machines. So if we have 3 machines, we have a specification that we want to run this kind of image and map these ports and that kind of stuff. So this is different from Ignite itself because it handles, like, for example, these 3 machines and with no name, node 0, node 1, node 2, etc. And now we can use it with both Docker if we're, for example, on macOS or like in a CI environment where virtualization is not enabled. But if we actually want to run real VMs, it's equally fast, and you can then just do backend Ignite, and it will use Ignite instead of Docker. So instead of a Docker run when starting the container image, it does an Ignite run, and hence can do this. But it still manages a set of machines, so you can think of this as more like Docker Compose with this kind of declarative configuration, Docker Compose for Ignite, basically. And we also have documentation on Footloose here, how to use it.
Hey, Lucas.
Hi.
Yeah, Mark, just a quick question on that. So is it actually then running a Footloose container within the Ignite VM, or is it just replacing all of the Footloose container work with an Ignite VM instead?
It's replacing everything that Footloose would do normally, and instead does an Ignite run and completely hands it off to Ignite.
Okay, so it's just using the Footloose CLI effectively to boot up what we use today on Footloose anyways. But now they're fully isolated VMs.
Yes, exactly. But it still looks the same, and like Ignite in turn uses like its architecture. Ignite itself uses a container to run Firecracker underneath, like this. But it has nothing. It has nothing with Footloose to do. So it's just the CLI when doing backend Ignite basically translates this spec into what Ignite knows about and hands it off there.
Cool, thanks.
Perfect. So yes, those are the large changes in 0.5. Right. Next one. Next up, or are there more questions about what's coming in, or in 0.5? Cool. Then let's go on to 0.6. So next up, we have a couple of changes we want to make with regards to, for example, extensibility. So I already talked a bit about this. So I made this 0.6 milestone. And the most important one is add containerd as support for the container runtime. This, because, I mean, containerd is much more lightweight and can be used in more situations than Docker. So hence, Ignite becomes a bit more portable when being able to choose. You can still use Docker as normal. That's just fine. But adding containerd as one option and maybe defaulting to containerd too, we'll see. Because, I mean, if you have installed Docker, you have containerd anyways. Yeah, so that's the like highest priority for the next release. And then next to that, we want to, as earlier said, refactor Ignite into fully utilize the client server model, so that we actually, in order to run the Ignite CLI, you have to start the daemon. And with this, to keep the good user experience, we're most probably gonna ship packages instead of just like raw binaries, and like debs and RPMs and that kind of stuff that also have a systemd service of some sort. So it runs ignited for you automatically, and then we solve this issue, which has been open from like basically the beginning of the project, that we don't need to operate as root in the Ignite CLI, which obviously is a bit scary, can be. And now when we have the client really thin, what it does is basically just with some sort of RPC framework, we'll see if we use just plain JSON or the web server, or if we use the Kubernetes API server style semantics, or something other than like gRPC over a socket. Comments there would be really appreciated, so we make the right decision there. And yeah, with this we also can support multiple different contexts for Ignite-D. And as we move over logic to Ignite-D instead of Ignite, and it should be said that in Ignite we'll keep the exact same CLI, the same UX as before, so that it still has the same user experience, developer experience. But as we move over functionality to Ignite-D, I think we'll create a configuration file with the different settings you might wanna set, like where are the Git repos I should be watching, past the SSH keys for those Git repos, or should I have be watching manifest directories, or finally, should I register as a virtual kubelet to a Kubernetes cluster? So that's maybe the most exciting feature for users, to be able to integrate natively with Kubernetes. And this can be a bit, I don't know exactly how to say it, but it can be a bit confusing, the Kubernetes support for Ignite, but it's totally complementary to what we already have. So basically we see that we want to use Ignite in order to bootstrap Kubernetes. So that's what we're doing in this guide, if you haven't seen it. So in images and kubeadm. And so in this guide, we show how to prepare some files for Kubernetes to run, for example, set up a kubeadm token and that kind of stuff. So it basically gives you a small set of certificates and a kubeadm file. And then you start the master with Ignite. You run kubeadm init on this master. And then you can create as many more masters or nodes you want using nearly the same Ignite run command, copy in the secrets that you need, and run kubeadm join. And now you have a highly available Kubernetes cluster. So this is one guide or demo of, in the end, how easy and fast it is to boot a Kubernetes cluster on top of Ignite VMs, and we envision that it's only going to get easier over time with better tooling around it. So as Ignite is one thing that drives Kubernetes, we can't have a hard dependency on it, because that would lead us into a chicken and egg problem. But we can add complementary support for Ignite to be able to integrate well with Kubernetes workloads. So say that you have a cluster with 3 nodes, and these 3 nodes are running containers just as normal. They might be running anywhere on your on-prem infrastructure. And now you want to add the functionality to run Ignite VMs in your Kubernetes cluster, or VMs in general. And you can do that by bringing a 4th node and running Ignite D. And with this, well, once we have this in this 06, Ignite D with virtual kubelet support. And what this is going to do then is that it registers the Ignite API that we have, the Ignite config file, as a CRD to Kubernetes. And now the user is able to do kubectl create and Ignite CRDs.
Lucas,
yes.
do you see like associating several objects together in order to do that, since running in a cluster of machines is going to require things like node selectors and the like? Or are we just going to like tie a pod name to the object or something?
So what I'm thinking is that once the VM specification is created as a CRD, the Ignite D controller will actually create a pod, like a dummy pod, with the same resource specifications. So it will have registered as a virtual kubelet, Ignite D, and there it has registered its size, like how many CPUs are there and how much memory. So Kubernetes knows about these. And based on the VM, it creates a pod with the similar specification requirements. Kubernetes goes ahead and schedules this pod to one of the virtual kubelets. You might be running many nodes with Ignite support. And once Kubernetes has placed the pod during taking all the whatever affinity and anti-affinity and resource scheduling things in mind, it schedules the pod to someplace, to one of the virtual kubelets, and once that virtual kubelet daemon then Ignite D sees that I should be running this, it goes ahead and does it. And I mean, we can even integrate with Flux. We can
You see a CRD-based controller that converts the Ignite API into pod specs.
Yes, I see that being built into as a mode to Ignite D.
And then similarly, Ignite D would then be running as a virtual kubelet registered on several nodes.
Yes, yes.
So I still am a little lost on how we get all of the richness of the pod spec associated with the Ignite CRD.
So it's like a
how would you specify a node selector, right? Like there's something missing there, but
so I think it's more like you start with the Ignite. So still in the Kubernetes mode 2, the definite source of truth is the Ignite CRD, and based of the Ignite CRD, pods are auto-generated basically. So you never see the pod as a user. That's just
but there's things that like would make sense for a user to use, like selecting a node, that would not be probably in the Ignite API.
Right.
So would we shove that in an annotation or something? Like, put your pod spec template into an annotation, and then it'll, like, the controller will parse it as a template or something.
Right. That's what we can go either way. Either we extend the Ignite object or the Ignite VM object in the CRD, like register more fields in the CRD versus in a normal
Oh, we could have
or
actually we could
yeah,
have an Ignite template, right?
yeah,
So
or that.
yeah, you could wrap the Ignite object in a larger custom resource.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
So that, or having an entirely different object.
Yeah.
So, but we can, and like what gets in. I mean, it's two totally different use cases that should be kept in mind. That the first use case, or like the first use cases we had in mind was like, I want to run legacy applications, or like stuff that requires specific kernels, and I just need a virtual machine. Ignite gives you that with Ignite Run or Ignite D with GitOps or similar. The second use case we saw was to create Kubernetes clusters really fast for CI for different testing purposes, or any application that is that needs VMs for testing purposes. Ignite can do that today too. But the third use case, which we're hoping to address here, is I already have Kubernetes and I already have these kinds of things set up. But now, on top of my Kubernetes clusters, I actually have some stuff which I want to manage in a Kubernetes native way, but still can't. They need to be running in virtual machines, so it's a bit tricky. So this gives us that kind of flexibility, but still this will be a very minimal implementation. I mean, it won't have all the bells and whistles of a project such as KubeVirt that also can do Windows and similar stuff. So this will be very specialized, very lightweight, and minimalistic implementation of this. And I mean, then with Kubernetes, with VM specifications in Kubernetes CRDs, you can also envision doing Kubernetes on top of Kubernetes, those kinds of things, which could be really, really interesting for cluster API or testing, but also like multi-tenancy purposes. I mean, there's this proof of concept from Darren Shepard about virtual Kubernetes, which is one way to do it, to like segregate that I see as a large Kubernetes cluster, but through this gateway, I only expose parts of it. And tell my client that this is the whole cluster, just this part. But another way is to like have your large cluster and create a couple of VMs inside of your cluster. And on these VMs, actually boot up a new Kubernetes cluster. And then give that whole Kubernetes cluster as a whole to your team X.
It's actually really similar to what Darren wrote about, which is using pods as nodes. And then this would be using pods as nodes, but the pods are actually Ignite VMs. Yeah.
Exactly. So this is kind of starting to think about a Kubernetes pod as like a standard library object in whatever in like distributed systems, basically. So once we have this pod as the central thing of either as an application or as a node or both, we can do really fancy stuff with it. And Chanwit, let me see. Or no, actually, I have the link here in this issue. So there we go. So Chanwit has been experimenting with this, and it's really neat. I mean, this at the moment it's a standalone project. Can I make this bigger? Can you see this?
Yes, very visible.
Perfect. So it's been experimenting with this out of tree, and we're hoping to streamline and then mainline this this kind of thing into Ignite and into the next release. So there we go. Here we have, first we have like a normal node. he's pointing to a cluster, but there are no VM. So the VM custom resource is there, but we don't have any instances of this custom resource, and we don't have any pods. Then he has an example, my VM, and this is now like dedicated, specific to his project here, CRD with chan-with-github.com. But this is, as we just discussed, like will either be the VM, the exact declarative configuration we have now, or it will be like a superset of that. We'll see. But basically something that declares the intent of the user, like we want to run this image, this kernel, this many CPUs, memory disk size. And then we apply this to the cluster, and we see that this virtual machine was created. Now we can see that we have the custom resource is there. The controller set state to running. A pod has been created. And now it's also running. Now we can see that we can SSH into it. So it's been started on the local machine, which registered as a virtual kubelet. And yeah, we have the kernel is working. That's right. Now he goes ahead and deletes the custom resource instance, and yeah, that deletes the VM from Ignite too. So this is like a work in progress, proof of concept of this kind of thing. And it's really neat. It's really exciting to see. And we're hoping to upstream mainline this as soon as we can. What do you all think?
I found this was a really creative use of K3s for the control plane. If you look at the VK Ignite YAML, maybe other people find it interesting.
Yeah, so for example here, and one thing also gonna add when I have time for it is like a sample K3s image, how to run K3s on top of Ignite VMs. It's also really fast, works well, and yeah, this is a Docker.
It's cool. Yeah, this is a compose file, and
yes,
there's actually no kubelet running here.
Right.
Which is cool. So the only kubelets is the virtual kubelet that's running on line 26. So pretty cool.
Great. So those three items are what we're aiming for the next cycle, and I think it's really. Oh, not this one. There we go. So it's really exciting. And if you have something you would like to see, just comment on the issues and we'll add it, prioritize it. Great. So we went through the Kubernetes integration, and yeah, then we have a section for contributing to Ignite. Dennis, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I can talk about it, but I can't share my screen because I have multi-screens and Zoom isn't very friendly towards that. So if you can just
oh, right, yeah,
sharing for me, then that would be helpful.
Yes. Sure.
So yeah, I'm still in midway through updating the docs, and we'll also add new or improve the contributing docs for the next release a bit, and add some guidelines and workflows, how to get going with contributing to Ignite. And yes, we have the issues. So if you navigate there, we have a couple more issues, I think, marked with help wanted, or what was the other?
Good first issue.
Yeah, good first issue, exactly. So we've added a couple of basically easy, simple, straightforward issues and improvements to Ignite that are simple to get going with. And there are often guidelines as to, or exact steps on what needs to be done and how to achieve what the issue describes. And absolutely, if you have any questions and want to start working on some of these issues, or have your own issue with Ignite that you want to see a feature or want to help fix a bug or similar, then don't be hesitant and just ping either Luxus or T Velho on GitHub, so either of us, and we'll be grateful to help and answer any questions, provide more resources, and guide you along the way. And here, yeah, this is a good issue with Ignite with Vagrant. We're also collecting various features that the community wants to see in Ignite. So here's, for example, Vagrant integration. Go ahead and comment and add your suggestions. Do you want to see this feature? Would this be useful? And then also, if you want to, with taking small steps, want to start and help towards achieving a certain goal or a certain feature, then go ahead and just fork the project, do your changes there, and via the standard GitHub pull requests, then when you have your changes ready, create a pull request, describe your pull request there, and add all of your changes. We now have the continuous integration in place, so it will verify that your changes have passed. And also via the details, you can directly go to Circle CI and see if you missed something or what went wrong if the CI didn't pass. And also, when doing a PR and editing your own fork, go ahead and run make autogen and tidy, which are also described in the how to contribute docs and build docs. So docs/devil.md, if I remember correctly, and that will also auto-generate all changed files and tidy your repository, so it's mostly just ready to go like that. And we have a bunch of make targets here, most of which are just for internal use. The build doc, if you can go to doc/devil.md, we can show the initial version. This isn't updated yet, but this will then continue or contain all of the more specific build instructions if you want to build it for example, for a different architecture now that we also support it. And yes, when you have your pull request ready, just assign either Luxus or me, Dennis, if you'll find us both there in the assignees, and then we go ahead and review your pull request. and give any feedback that needs to be addressed, and or improvements if we see something that this can be, or here's a typo, for example. Then after fixing those issues from your side, then we'll review it again. We see those changes, and if the continuous integration shows a green light and everything looks fine, we'll merge it. And thank you for your contribution. So that's basically how to get started.
Cool. Yeah, and we have got really good contributions from the community. We hope to see that continue. And yeah, also need to mention that the code that made Ignite happen on Footloose was created by Roberto Ruiz from Aqua Security. So really grateful to see that happen, and we're gonna do a Footloose release 060 soon, which holds those changes, so you can use both Ignite and Footloose together seamlessly. For example, for CI. And yeah, also if you would like to become a maintainer of Ignite, it's just like help out with different things. We have these meetings every Monday, so join here, help out with different issues and that kind of stuff, and we'll figure that out. We would appreciate that kind of help too. Do we have anything else for today's meeting?
Maybe any questions? Is anyone already getting interested in helping out?
I mean, I'm certainly interested in taking some issues. So.
Sweet.
I might look at the GitOps catalog one or the Vagrant stuff. It looked like somebody was already interested in working on the Vagrant support, though, right?
Yes, we had a volunteer. I tend to mark the contributor with the contributor assigned label if there's somebody that said they want to do it.
Yeah, this is good that somebody will pick this up, because them developing and interacting with Ignite on macOS is going to be a little tough for people. So.
And Lucas and Dennis are really fast code reviewers. It's my personal experience. Yeah, while we were meeting here, Lucas reviewed one of my PRs.
Yeah, try to keep a low latency there. Cool, but if there's nothing else, we'll see you all next week.
Excellent.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thanks a lot.
See you.
Bye.
See you.
Thank you. Bye.